simple has its positives and its negatives, right? Being simple has its positives and negatives. And of the positives of being simple is that when truth comes, you accept it more easily. You're not clouded by philosophical baggage, if you like. You don't have lots of weird ideas. You're a simple person, and that's why, generally speaking, even in society, subhanAllah, the first converts are always the sincere, innocent people. These are the first converts. They're always the sincere people, not the ones who are convoluted, not the ones who have... No, it's just simple. Another benefit that the Arabs had was that they were a people who were so used to hardship, so used to lack of food and lack of water and everything, that this, of course, helped the armies in the early conquest of Islam. You see, the Romans and the Persians were spoiled troops. These were troops that needed supply lines. These were troops that had lots of armor, lots of baggage with them. And the Arabs, they didn't have all of this. And we're used to traveling in the desert for long distances with small amounts of water, small amounts of food. And early Islamic conquest needed that. It needed that stamina that neither the Romans nor the Persians had. And so Allah chose a group that He knew would be able to benefit Islam in its early time. Also, the Arabs had characteristics that were very positive. Bravery. They were not cowards. They were brave people. They were proud, and in a sense, pride can be negative, pride can be positive. If you're proud of something that is worthy to be proud of, you're proud of being a Muslim, this is positive. And if you're proud of being of something that is racist, this is negative. So having encouraged the pride sometimes is good. They were also honest people. The Arabs hated lying. They hated lying. They were very honest people. And there's many evidences to show this. Of them is the famous story of Abu Sufyan with Heraclius, which we referenced last week when we talked about the emperor of Rome met Abu Sufyan, right? And he asked him a series of questions. And we did mention in a lot of detail that Abu Sufyan was brought in front of Heraclius, and the rest of the caravan remained behind him. Because the Heraclius knew that Abu Sufyan is an enemy to the Prophet, he's not a believer in the Prophet. So Heraclius wanted to make sure that Abu Sufyan is speaking the truth. So he put the back of Abu Sufyan, all of the people of Quraysh were at his back, the caravan, and he's facing Heraclius. And then he told the interpreter to the people behind Abu Sufyan, if Abu Sufyan lies, make a motion to me that he's lying. Tell me that he's lying. Now they're all pagans. They're all idol worshippers. None of them Muslims. Abu Sufyan said, were it not for the fact that my people would accuse me of being a liar, I would have invented lies against the Prophet at that point in time. I didn't want to tell the truth. I didn't want to say all of these things because they're all positive. Is he the most noble? Is he honest? Is he trustworthy? Is he this? He said, were it not for the fact that my people would call me a liar. In other words, despite being a pagan, he didn't want to be called a liar. Truthfulness, honesty was something that was prized amongst the Arabs. Also, the Arabs were sincere in their oaths. If they gave a promise, they would uphold it. We quoted last week an incident that really shows this. A promise that was upheld. Abdul Muttalib and his promise to Allah. Abdul Muttalib and his promise to Allah. Nobody is even telling him that, oh, this is a promise you made to me. He made a promise to Allah, and he wanted to fulfill it. They were people of their word, and they abided by their word. And that's why there were no written contracts in Arabia until Islam came. There was no need for it. If a man said it, that was his word. There was no need for witnesses. If a man said it, that's it. He said it. He's not going to retract on his word. So treachery was considered to be very, very evil amongst them. Now the final point that we'll mention is that the Arabs were, of course, the best horsemen. There was no denying this, that the Romans and the Persians could not compete neither with the horses of Arabia nor the riders of Arabia. So the horses of Arabia were the best horses to this day, the Arabian horses. And by the way, there are a hadith about Arabian horses, by the way. And the Prophet ﷺ praised horses from Arabia. And subhanAllah, these are hadith that are authentic. And subhanAllah, to this day, the world knows that the most prized horses are Arabian horses. And our Prophet ﷺ said that the best horses are the Arabian horses, the horses of this peninsula. And subhanAllah, to this day, as we said, the Arabian horses are the best because our Prophet ﷺ said so. So the barakah remained, or the blessings remained in them. So the horses were the best, and then the riders were the best. and they were the most accustomed to the most brutal war. They're not used to heavy armor. They're used to riding, as we said, long distances. They're used to a very difficult type of war, which the Romans and the Persians would not going to be accustomed to. So for all of these reasons, and then of course, there is the issue of the Arabic language itself. The Arabic language is a Semitic language. And the Semitic languages are far more eloquent and powerful than languages based in Latin. Anybody who has studied Hebrew, Aramaic, those of you who have studied Arabic, you understand the transmutation of the three-letter word. ذهب, فعل, فاعل, يفعل, مفعول. All of these transmutations, this is a very Semitic issue. It's not found in the other languages. It's a very powerful tool. If you learn one verb, ذهب, let's say, from it you can derive over 200 nouns and verbs and concepts. Because the same verb will give you roots, will give you structures that you will derive over 200 different nouns and adjectives and verbs and whatnot. This is an amazing language, and it's a powerful language. And generally speaking, it is said that the Semitic languages are the most eloquent languages. We, of course, believe this theologically, but even people who are not of the theology, they say that the Semitic languages have a power and beauty that is not found in the other languages. Of course, Semitic languages, in our days, it's only Hebrew and Arabic that are spoken, but of course, in the days gone by, with Aramaic and Syriac and all of these other languages are all Semitic languages. And the final reason why Allah chose, or the final reason we will mention, of course there must be many more, the final reason that we will mention why Allah chose the Arab is of course the most obvious one, and that is the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam made a dua. The dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam, as he's building the Kaaba, him and his son Ismail, and he says, رَبَّنَا وَبَعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ. O our Lord, we pray to you that from our progeny you send forth one prophet or messenger, رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ, who will come to them and recite to them your signs, your ayat, and will purify them, and will clean them, يُزَكِّيهِمْ, and will teach them the book and wisdom. So Ibrahim and Ismail made a dua that there should be a prophet from their progeny. Because he knew that there would be prophets from the other progeny of Ishaq. He knew this. Because Allah says in the Quran that when Sarah became pregnant, فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِإِسْحَاقَ وَمِنْ وَرَاءِ إِسْحَاقَ يَعْقُوبَ. Even before Ishaq was born. And of course the Old Testament expounds upon this much more. Allah knows if it's true or not, but the Old Testament says that the angels or the God said to Abraham that through this son of yours shall be my covenant. Now we believe there was a covenant through that son for thousands of years, but then it was transferred to the sons of Ismail. So Allah says that when Sarah was pregnant, we will give you Ishaq, and after Ishaq we'll give you another prophet, Yaqub. So he's being told that there's going to be many prophets from Ishaq. And we believe that every single prophet that came after Ibrahim, up until the Prophet Muhammad came from the children of Ishaq. We believe that every prophet after the generation of Ibrahim was from the descendants of Ishaq. We believe that. We give them that privilege because Allah gave them that privilege. But we say the final prophet, only one prophet came after Ismail from his progeny, and that is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Ibrahim makes a dua that, oh Allah, from his son as well, I want a child. I want a prophet who will come to his people and who will come and recite the signs and purify and teach them the book. And so, of course, the children of Ismail are the Arabs. And so, the Prophet Ibrahim's dua has to be fulfilled. That is why the main reason we can say that Allah chose the Arabs. The main reason, I left it for the last, is that the Prophet Ibrahim said, I want a prophet from this progeny, from this son. And that is indeed what Allah Azza wa Jalla gave. And that was exactly the Prophet ﷺ said, that he said in an authentic hadith, أَنَا دَعْوَةُ أَبِي Ibrahim. He said, I am the response of the dua that my father Ibrahim made. أَنَا دَعْوَةُ أَبِي Ibrahim. I am that response of the dua. وَأَنَا بُشْرَى عِيسَى بْنِ مَرْيَمَ. And I am the glad tidings that Jesus predicted. And to this day in the New Testament, there are references that Jesus says, I must leave you for of course the Hebrew or the Greek says paracletes to come. It's been translated in different ways. Perhaps this is a reference, and this is what some Muslim theologians say, that Jesus is saying, I have to leave for the other one to come. And the Prophet Muhammad is saying, and the Quran is saying as well, that Jesus predicted his coming. So he said, وَأَنَا بُشْرَى, and the good news. The good news has generally been translated as by the Christians, but we believe that Jesus Christ predicted the coming of the Prophet Muhammad. So he's saying, I am the good news that Jesus Christ told would come. So he is the da'wah of Ibrahim and the bushra of Isa ibn Maryam. This is what our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. We already pointed out that the lineage of the Prophet was the most noble lineage. We mentioned through the hadith in Sahih Muslim that the Prophet said that out of the children of Ismail, Allah chose Kinana. Out of the children of Kinana, Allah chose Quraysh. Out of the children of Quraysh, Allah chose Bani Hashim. And out of the children of Bani Hashim, Allah chose me. And so this means that the Prophet was chosen from the most noble of all lineages, and we firmly believe that there is no lineage more noble than his lineage. So let's now move on to the issue of the birth of the Prophet ﷺ. We spoke about Abdul Muttalib and his ancestors. We now get to the Prophet's direct and immediate parents, and these are of course Abdullah and Amina. Abdullah and Amina, both of them, we have but a few lines about their life and times. They have very little content for a number of reasons. Firstly, because the both of them, as we know, very short lives. But both died in their early 20s, maybe even before this, 18, 19. Secondly, and so obviously you have a short life, you don't have a lot of memories to leave. I mean, you have only lived a few years. Secondly, the both of them died before it was known that the Prophet is a prophet. So nobody's recording the life and times of even those 20 years. These are regular people of Quraysh. They might be normal, they might be good, but there's no prediction that these are going to become the parents. Certainly when the Prophet becomes a prophet, it's already been 40 years, right, since his parents have died. And by the time he gets to Medina, 53 years, by the time he himself passes away, 63 years, he's alive to remember what happened 63 years ago. Right? So when Islam finally reached its power, when Islam finally became stable, who is living to remember the early days of Islam? And that is why we're going to come to this after Ramadan when we get there. We all know that the Makkah period lasted 53 years, 40 before prophecy and 13 after prophecy. Correct? 63 years. The Medina period lasted how many years? 10 years. Now, if we were to put all of the chronicles of those 53 years in a volume, and all of the chronicles of the Medina years in a volume, the Medinan volume would be 3 times the size of the Makkah volume. Even though the time frame for Medina is 10 years, and Makkah is 53. Why? Because when Islam is stable, that's when people can record and write and talk and remember. When Islam becomes powerful, that's when it is easier to record events and remember them. When the followers become peaceful and stable, not when they're persecuted, not when Bilal is being dragged in the streets of Medina and Amman is being tortured. I mean, they're not going to have time to remember and narrate to their children, right? So, if this is the case of the life of the Prophet that we have 1 volume versus 3 volumes of his life, what do you think of his mother ex-Prophet? So, sadly, we have very little information, much of which is legend, much of which is not quite, we don't know for sure if it's true or not, but what we do know, inshallah, we'll try to narrate it that we have here. Abdullah, as we know, was the one whom Abdul Muttalib was about to sacrifice. I already told you the story that he was saved. Right after this, immediately after the saving of Abdullah, Abdul Muttalib decided that he needed to choose a bride for his son. According to one report, he was 18 years old at the time. And one version says he was 20, 25 years old. But he was a young man, so a young man at the time. And Abdul Muttalib chose for him the daughter of the chief of the Banu Zuhra. The Banu Zuhra were one of the tribes of the Quraysh. He said many times, and the average Muslim is unaware of this, Quraysh is a big tribe. Within it are many small sub-tribes. You have to memorize this. Quraysh is the largest tribe. Within it are many sub-tribes. The Banu Hashim is one, the Banu Zuhra is another. So the chief of the Banu Zuhra had a daughter by the name of Amina, whose name was of course Wahab. So the chieftain of the Banu Zuhra was Wahab, and he had a daughter, Amina. And so Abdul Muttalib proposed on behalf of Abdullah. Abdul Muttalib proposed to Amina bint Wahab on behalf of Abdullah. And this proposal took place shortly before the caravan season, when the caravans were about to depart to Syria. Shortly before that. And so Wahab agreed to marry his daughter to the son. So they were both chieftains, right? And so when you're the son of a chieftain, you want to marry the daughter of a chieftain. Abdul Muttalib is the chief of the Banu Hashim. And the chief of the Banu Zuhra is Wahab. And so the daughter of Wahab, Amina, and the daughter of Abdul Muttalib, Abdullah, they agreed to get married. So Abdullah got married to Amina just a few days before the caravan departed. And it is said that he barely spent 3 or 5 days with her before he had to go with the caravan. He spent barely a week with this new bride of his, and he then departed on the caravan, as you know, never to be seen again. So they had an extremely short marriage, because as soon as they got married, they had to leave for the caravan. Now there are some legends here, there are some stories here that are not authentically narrated, but there's no harm in mentioning them, because there's nothing wrong with them. Now I have to point out here that I try my best to keep authentic stories only. We need to realize that just like with any story, and our Prophet is no exception, people wanted to add legends and make it bigger and bigger. And in fact, it is very true to say that because he is the Prophet of Allah, people wanted to add more details and make it more flowery than it is. Our job is to stick to the facts. Our job is to look at it academically, through the science of hadith, the science of transmission. We don't let our emotions sway us. Sometimes it's okay to narrate such stories if there's nothing wrong with them, and this is one of them, that their legends are mentioned, that Abdullah had a type of brightness on his face. He had a type of nadara, it's called. And that it is also mentioned that he was a very handsome young man. And so the young damsels of the Quraysh were all eager to marry him. The young ladies of the Quraysh were all eager that he would propose to them. And it is said that a number of them hinted at this to him, that why don't you take me as a bride, and why don't you, propose to me? I'll be more than willing to become your bride. And he said, I have to follow my father, whatever my father wishes. After he married Amina, those same ladies that were suggesting themselves to him to marry, they stopped taking an interest in him completely. And so he said, what is the matter? Why are you not, speaking with me or anything? So they said that you had a brightness in your face that no longer is there. This is what it said, meaning that after he was with Amina for a while, this brightness left, meaning that obviously it's now the progeny, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Allah knows best. This is not an authentic one, but there's no harm in narrating something like this. Nonetheless, so within a week of marriage, less than a week after marriage, he only spent a few days with Amina. He then had to leave, catch the caravan, go all the way to Syria. On the way back from Syria, he fell severely ill with the caravan, and he was slowing the caravan down. And by the time they got to Yathrib, which was later to become Medina, he said to the caravan, I'm slowing you down. I have relatives in Yathrib. I will stay with them until I recover. You go back to Mecca. Question, who were his relatives in Yathrib? How did he have relatives in Yathrib? Go back 2 weeks. Abdul Muttalib's what? Mother. So that's his grandmother. It's his paternal grandmother. Now subhanAllah, notice Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared some relationship with the Prophet and the city he would go to. This is very rare. The Quraysh married amongst themselves. It's very rare for them to go to out of nowhere. Yathrib is not a city that is common for them, right? And yet Allah prepared this. There's a relationship with Yathrib. The Prophet says, we're going to come to in 2 weeks. He visited Yathrib as a 6-year-old boy, because his mother wanted to take him there, right? So there's a relationship with the city. Allah has in His divine plan this prepared. And so Abdullah said, I have my cousins here in the tribe of Banu Najjar. I have my cousins here. I will stay with them until I recover. You go back to Mecca. By the time the caravan got back to Mecca, Amin is all excited. My husband's coming back. I want to tell him that I'm pregnant. And lo and behold, he's not with the caravan. So most likely Abdullah did not even know that Amina was pregnant. In fact, if we believe this version of the event, which is Ibn Sa'd, he could not have known, because he was only with her for 4 days. So by the time the caravan comes back, she is told that he is sick and he should be coming in a few weeks after he recovers. And then the next news comes that he has in fact passed away in Yathrib. Whatever the sickness was, we don't know. He has passed away at a very young age, 22 years old. He passes away, and he is buried somewhere over there. Nobody knows where he is buried. Nobody has ever discovered this, nor can anybody do it now, but he's buried somewhere in Yathrib. So Amina becomes a widow at the age of 18, 19, young age, maybe even younger than this, carrying the offspring of Abdullah. And the Prophet ﷺ is born in the famous year of the elephant, and this leads us to the issue now of the date of his birth. When exactly was he born? Now, and this is the next discussion, which will last us quite a while, because I believe that this is interesting to discuss and also has relevance to modern times. Now, we have been told that the Prophet ﷺ was born on the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, and this is the commonly known date. Yet the fact of the matter is that our early historical textbooks mention a number of dates. There is no unanimous agreed upon decision regarding the date of the Prophet ﷺ's birth. The Prophet ﷺ told us certain things that we know for sure. Of them, in the famous hadith of Sahih Muslim, that a man asked the Prophet ﷺ, why do you fast on Mondays? Why do you fast every Monday? He said, this was the day I was born on. And this was the day that revelation began to me. Iqra came down on Monday. So we know for a fact he was born on a Monday. Okay, that narrows down a day of the week. How about a year? Well, there are some narrations that mention the year as well. There's a beautiful narration in which Uthman ibn Affan asks one of the oldest Qurashis, and his name is Qubat ibn Ashyam, after the death of the Prophet. He asks him, أَأَنْتَ أَكْبَرُ in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Are you Akbar? Meaning, what does Akbar here mean? Older. أَنْتَ Akbar, because he's an old man. But of course Akbar also means older or grander, right? So, Qubayt smiles and he goes, the Prophet ﷺ is Akbar minni, but I am older than him. He changed the question because the question the question is alluding to the fact, are you bigger than the Prophet ﷺ? So he said, no, the Prophet ﷺ is bigger than me, but I am older than him. And ascended minni. And then he says, the Prophet ﷺ was born we have a year now. He was born in the year of the elephant. And as for me, I remember my mother taking me outside of Mecca as a child, and I saw the dried up green dung that the elephants had left. What does this show? What does this show? That he remembers the elephant's dung, which is basically the same year, the year of the elephants, right? And the Prophet was born that year. So he's a little bit older than the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet is bigger than him. This hadith is narrated in Tirmidhi. So, Qubayt therefore puts a date. Also we have somebody asked another Sahabi, Suwayd ibn Ghafla, about the Prophet's birth. He said, the Prophet ﷺ and I were both born the same year that we were born al-Fil, the year of the elephant. So from both of these narrations, we can pretty much verify that the Prophet ﷺ was born in the year of the elephant. Even though there are some opinions he was born 10, 15, 20 years before after, but these are very minuscule minority. The bulk or the vast majority of early historians said he was born in the year of the elephant. We already said the Arabs did not have a calendar. We already said that they would have a calendar based upon events. The year of the drought, the year of the invasion, the year of the elephant. And then for the next 5, 10 years, they would say 2 years after the year of the elephant, 3 years before the year, until something else big happened. And then they began something else, right? So this was their calendar system until Umar ibn Khattab came and said, we need a calendar. This is a part of civilization to have your calendar, right? We need a calendar. And then he made the Islamic Hijri calendar, which we follow to this day. So pretty much we are confirmed now 2 things. The year of the elephant and a Monday. Okay, what is the year of the elephant? Difficult to date because we don't have any type of chronicles of the Abyssinians and what they did, but by and large, piecing together various factors that are beyond the scope of this, majority of historians say this corresponds to 570 of the Christian era. 570 of the Christian era. 570 CE, the Prophet ﷺ was born. Now, how about the day of the... So it's the year of the elephant, fine. How about the month and the day of the month? Two of the earliest books ever written about the history of the Prophet ﷺ, we find differing accounts. The most famous book of history is, of course, Ibn Ishaq. We talked about it, the Seerah of Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq died 150 Hijrah. Ibn Ishaq says, without any chain of narrators, he's writing from himself, that the Prophet ﷺ was born on a Monday, the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, in the year of the elephant. So this explains why this opinion is present. He says very clearly that the Prophet was born on a Monday, on the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, in the year of the elephant. However, between him and the Prophet ﷺ are 100 and almost 200 years, because remember, going back to the birth of the Prophet ﷺ is 53 before the birth. So between him and the birth of the Prophet ﷺ is 200 years. And he doesn't tell us where he gets it from, who's narrating this to him, what is the chain of narrators. When we look at the second earliest book, and this is called the Tabaqat of Ibn Sa'd, which is written around 220 or so Hijrah, the Tabaqat of Ibn Sa'd. The Tabaqat of Ibn Sa'd says that it is said that the Prophet ﷺ was born on a Monday. Some people say, I quote, he was born on the 10th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Others say he was born on the 2nd of Rabi' al-Awwal. Two opinions, neither of which conform to the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Ibn Abbas, it is said, also said the 10th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Ibn Kathir, the famous historian of Islam, Ibn Kathir in his Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya says that the majority opinion is that the Prophet ﷺ was born in Rabi' al-Awwal, but others have other months as well. And then scholars differ with regards to the date of this book. One group said he was born on the 2nd of Rabi' al-Awwal. Ibn Kathir says this was the opinion of Abu Ma'shar al-Sindi, a famous scholar of history, died 171. It was also the opinion of Ibn Abd al-Barr, a very famous scholar of Andalus, died 463. It was also the opinion of Al-Waqidi, who died 207. Al-Waqidi is one of the most famous historians of early Islam. So we have three very early authorities saying he was born on the 2nd of Rabi' al-Awwal. Ibn Kathir goes on. Another opinion is that he was born on the 8th of Rabi' al-Awwal. It says this is the opinion of Ibn Hazm, the famous scholar of Andalus, Imam Malik ibn Anas, you all know Imam Malik, the scholar of Medina, and the opinion of Az-Zuhri, who is, again, I cannot explain how famous Az-Zuhri is, 128 Hijrah, and opinion of Muhammad ibn Jubayr ibn Mut'im, a number of famous people of the past, the 8th of Rabi' al-Awwal. A third opinion is that he was born on the 10th of Rabi' al-Awwal. So we have now 2nd, 8th, and 10th. 10th of Rabi' al-Awwal. He says this is the opinion of Ibn Asakir and the opinion of Ja'far al-Sadiq, or Ja'far al-Sadiq. He doesn't know. So the descendant of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Shia consider him to be one of the Imams. He's the 6th Imam. The Shia, but he's a descendant of the Prophet ﷺ. So one of the descendants of the Prophet ﷺ says that he was born on the 10th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Ibn Kathir says the fourth opinion is that he was born on the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, and this is the opinion of Ibn Ishaq. But there is no isnad on this matter. In other words, there's no chain of narrators that mentions anything about the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Ibn Kathir does say that this is the most popular opinion in his time. Ibn Kathir died 770 something, way after. In medieval Islam, 12th of Rabi' is the most popular opinion. And from medieval Islam up until our times is the most popular. But in early Islam it was not the most popular. The 5th opinion, the 17th of Rabi' al-Awwal, the 6th opinion, the 22nd of Rabi' al-Awwal, the 7th opinion, he wasn't even born in Rabi' al-Awwal, he was born in Ramadan. And this is the opinion of Zubayr ibn Battar, who was the first scholar to ever write a history on Makkah. And he died 256 Hijrah. And then there are other opinions as well. So, to summarize, there are over 10 opinions in the earliest books of Islam about the exact day that the Prophet was born. None of them are, let's say, indisputable. None of them are clear. None of them have solid evidence. All of them are the opinions of early authors and narrators. And to be very academic, the opinion of the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal seems to have much less weight than the 2nd and the 8th and the 10th. Because these three have tabi'un for the tabi'un. They have descendants of the Prophet. Whereas the opinion of the 12th, it is by Ibn Ishaq, who is 200 years after the birth of the Prophet, and he doesn't have any chain. So if this is the case, why then is the opinion of the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal the most popular? So much so that for many of you it's shocking that I'm daring to go against this fact of history, right? This might be blasphemy to me, but how dare you? Why is it so popular? Very easy to respond. Point number one, Ibn Ishaq. I already mentioned that 90% of authors who write about Sirah, they only rely on Ibn Ishaq. Just take Ibn Ishaq and summarize it, redo it, translate it, do this and that. That's what they do. And it's a good book, but it's not the only book. So because Ibn Ishaq is Ibn Ishaq, and because he says 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, end of story. No questions asked, is going to be the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal. The second thing, or the second reason why the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal became so popular, and this leads us to a controversial issue, but I don't shy away from controversy, as you all know, is that the first time that the Prophet's birthday was celebrated as a public event, i.e. the Mawlid al-Nabi or the Milad al-Nabi as we call it, the first time that it was celebrated, the authorities who celebrated it chose the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal. And because they chose the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, now that's it. It just spread like wildfire. The day and the event and the custom. Now I have written a detailed article about the history of the Mawlid and who started it and how did it become popular, and you can refer to it on Muslim Matters. It's called A History of the Mawlid by myself. You can just Google it and you'll find it 3 parts. And just to summarize, the Mawlid or the Milad al-Nabi, the first recorded instance that we have of anybody celebrating Milad al-Nabi is around 517 Hijrah. 517 Hijrah, i.e. 6th century of Islam. So for 500 years, the concept of celebrating the birthday of the Prophet is simply unknown to the Muslims. They cannot, because celebrating birthdays is not the custom that comes from Islam or from, I'm not saying it's haram by them, I'm saying it's not something that the Arabs would do. They wouldn't record birthdays to celebrate them in the first place, right? Many of you, I know my own grandmother had no idea when she was born. They didn't record these things. It was not something of significance to them. The day and the month and the year that you were born. This is a Western concept that is now modern. Everybody records it. But that was not something that, if you even ask your own grandparents, many of them would not know. You know, it's not something that was recorded. And so, the concept of celebrating it is a very late addition. And the first group that celebrated it were the Fatimids of Egypt. The Fatimids are a dynasty that are not of Sunni theology. They are an extreme Shi'i dynasty. The Fatimids are the ancestors of, in today's time, the Aga Khanis and the Buhra, the Ismailis. The Fatimids are the ancestors of these groups, the extreme Shia groups. And for a number of years, they ruled over Egypt. The Fatimid dynasty ruled over Egypt. And they instituted over 30, 40 festivals. And of course, there's a reason why rulers have festivals. Why do people have festivals? What does it do? Distracting and economy. People come and buy and sell. Popularity of whatever is called the nation state in our times, or in their times, the ruling family, right? So there's a reason why the ruling class want to have public festivals. There's a philosophy behind it. And the Fatimids had over 30 or 40 festivals throughout the year. Every few weeks there was a major event and festival. And they celebrated Ghadir Khum, they celebrated the 10th of Muharram, these are all Shia festivals. They celebrated the birth of this Imam, the death of that Imam. And of those celebrations, it is said, they celebrated the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. This is the first time in Islamic history that we come across the celebration of the birthday of the Prophet. As I said, 517, 517. And the people who are doing it are these Fatimids. And as we said, there's clearly a motive for them to do it. When it was done in Fatimid Egypt, then 150 years later, some Sunni governors thought this was a good idea, and they imported this particular festival And because it was done in Egypt on the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, Egypt at that time was a Fatimid state, they imported it to Mosul, which is outside of Baghdad, it's a place in Iraq. The first Sunni governor, he was not a Khalifa, the first Sunni governor who celebrated the Mawlid, celebrated it around 670 or so Hijrah. So for 670 years, this was unknown in the Muslim world to celebrate the birthday of the Prophet. And this celebration was done once again on the 12th, and it became a very luxurious festival. And various governors and rulers would then compete with each other who could have the bigger festival and the grander festival. Free meat and free bread and free, gifts were given out to people. So it became literally a national festival. And as I said, there are reasons why rulers want to do this, and so they began to compete with one another in order to attract the trade, the commerce. Just like now, why do governments want the Olympics to happen in their country? Right? Why do governments want the World Cup to come to their country? There's reasons. We need to be a little bit more reading into it. And so the governors wanted these festivals to become the biggest, so each one wants theirs to be bigger and bigger. And of course, it's the birthday of the Prophet, and who's ever going to say anything about that? And so slowly but surely, from 660 AH, it began to spread in Sunni land. Initially, some scholars opposed it. Some scholars, said, well, if you do it with these conditions, it's okay. After a while, under public pressure, just the floodgates opened, and it became a very, very common festival. And you all know my opinion on this is that the way to celebrate the birthday of the Prophet, so if you really wanted to celebrate it, is to fast on Mondays, because that's what he would do. If you really want to celebrate his birthday, then you should fast every Monday. Because when he was asked, why do you fast on Monday? He said, because I was born on a Monday. So to take one day of the year and do events and whatnot, I'm not going to be harsh here, but let me just say, it's a really easy pop-out to show that you're loving the process of it. If you do something more good. Real love is to be dedicated throughout the year, right? Real love is to show that love every single day, and not just one day of the year by giving some money and going to a festival. Nonetheless, so because the first time that the Mawlid was celebrated was 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, what happened? It became the name associated in the minds of the people. Even though, and then we conclude here with this section, move on to the next one, even though academically speaking, it is actually a very weak date. And the 8th and the 10th and even the 2nd are more authentic historically, and they have evidences from the Sahaba and Tabi'un more than the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Now, we also know that, and there change their narrative back to Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, who died 95 Hijrah, so there's a gap. He didn't see the Prophet. But he said that it had been narrated to me that the Prophet was born at high noon. So there's a gap, but it is a gap in early Islam, so we can overlook. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib died 95. His father is of the age of the companions, right? So we can overlook this little gap, and this is the only narration that we have about the timing of his birth. And that is high noon. And the sun was at its pinnacle in heat. And of course, there is a clear symbolism here that is not lost on anybody. That when the sun is brightest, this is when the Prophet is coming out with his own truth. That is what Allah is revealing, or Allah is sending down the Prophet because it is coinciding with the time of the bright sun. Just like the bright sun illuminates everything, so too this Prophet ﷺ will illuminate everything, and nothing will remain dark around him. Now, when it comes to the actual birth of the Prophet ﷺ, there are so many legends and so many narrations, not one of which is academically sound, except for one. All the rest of them are really legends. These legends are mentioned, and subhanAllah, what is really amazing, and I have to say this frankly here, that we don't need to invent lies to praise the Prophet ﷺ. We don't need to invent fairy tales. Allah has praised him enough, and the facts are enough. We don't need to fabricate things. And what is really amazing is that the earliest books you go through have the least information. But as you go on in history, then the books get bigger and bigger, and the details get more and more. And you wonder, where did this come from? And if you want to come to Mount, even demonstrate it. Ibn Ishaq is this big. And then you have another book written in the 9th century about the Seerah. Wallahi, it is this big. Now, Ibn Ishaq is the first book of Seerah, right? And he is saying, I want to write everything I come across. And it's this big. And then you have a book written 700 years later, 5 times the size of Ibn Ishaq. And this book is full of, and it is said to me, and my Shaykh said, and this and that. Where is it coming from? Well, it's something that, as we said, a little bit legends and whatnot. So, What some of you might have heard, the Prophet was born, let's say, already circumcised. Another says he was born and he fell into sajda. Another said he was born and he lifted his finger to the sky to say the shahada. I mean, well, we don't need to do this, and it makes a mockery of our religion. It makes a mockery of our religion. We don't need to invent these things about the Prophet ﷺ. He is the best human being, and the facts are enough to show us that. And when we resort to these tales, wallahi, it makes our religion not look as dignified as it used to look, you know. Ibn Ishaq mentions none of these things, because he doesn't have this information. But when you turn to books written in 700 Hijrah, 800 Hijrah, mashallah, the guy knows so many details, you wonder, where did he get it from, okay? There's only one hadith that mentions the birth of the Prophet. He mentions his own birth. And it is a hadith narrated in Musnad Imam Ahmad's book of hadith, and it is authentic hadith. That the Prophet ﷺ said, when my mother gave birth to me. So now he's telling us. It's a hadith that goes back to him. It's not something, because again, imagine you witnessed Amina in the room. Come on, you know, use the brain that Allah has given us. Would a man be there and witness Amina being given birth, so that he then narrates that when he came out he fell into sajda, when he came out he lifted his finger to the sky? I mean, you think about it. But now the Prophet is saying, so Allah told him this happened. He is saying, when my mother gave birth to me, this happened. Right? So now this is something we don't have to doubt at all. The Prophet is telling us. So he said that when my mother was carrying me, this is the first thing, that when my mother was carrying me, and in one version, وَضَعَتْنِي, gave birth to me, so there both versions are mentioned, but the point is, when he was either in the room or when he came out, my mother saw a light emanate from her that cast its light, or it reached all the way to the city of Busra in the land of Syria. The city of Busra in the land of Syria. Busra is on the south, which is the border of what is what? But these people don't know where that is, so that doesn't do us much good. Okay, I might, but these people don't know where that is. It's basically very close to the Arabian border. It's more on the southern side of the Arabian, what is now Saudi Arabia. That's closer to that side. So it's on the southern side of Syria. So the Prophet is saying that my mother saw a light, either in a dream or a physical light, he doesn't mention what, coming from her, that came all the way and illuminated the palaces, or the city of Busra, the palaces of the cities of Busra in Sham, in Syria. Now, what is the significance of this? Scholars have tried to understand why Syria, and why, you know, this light coming from Amina. Of course, the light is him. The light is the Prophet, that she's carrying something that will bring light to Busra of Sham. Allah knows best, but there's some things that have been derived here, that Sham or Syria is mentioned because, now the people of Syria can be happy, alhamdulillah, there's a lot of Syrians here. Last time I taught this class there was no Syrians there, so now we have a lot of Syrians here. Syria is a blessed land, according to our religion. Now before you get really happy, do realize that the Islamic Syria is not modern Syria. Islamic Syria includes modern day Jordan and modern day Palestine, a number of different. So Sham is broader than modern day Syria. But you guys are included, so you can breathe easily, alhamdulillah. So, you are the poor, yes? You are the poor, true. So it is true that our religion considers Sham to be a holy land overall. And of course, the children of Ishaq, Bani Israel, the Jews, they always considered that region to be holy, and in particular, Palestine region to be holy. To this day they do that, right? So we also believe that there is a type of holiness in these lands. And that is why Allah says in the Quran, Subhanallah asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-harami ila al-masjid al-aqsa alladhi barakna hawlahu. There is barakah around Masjid al-Aqsa. This is Sham. Sham, there is barakah over there. And the Prophet predicted that Sham would remain a fortress of Islam. There's always going to be people of Islam in Sham. And amazingly, Sham was the first major country that was conquered, a province that was conquered after the Arabian Peninsula, right? Right after the death of the Prophet, in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, Sham was conquered. And one of the first cities, maybe even the first city that was outside the Arabian Peninsula is Mosul. So there is an indication that the Prophet is going to challenge status quo. Sham was the right arm of the Byzantine Empire. I mean, Damascus, do you understand? We think of Damascus as an Arab land, an Arab civilization. Before the coming of Islam, Damascus was the right hand of the Byzantine Empire. It was the jewel of the Romans. It was where everything happened, commerce and trade and culture and civilization, everything was there. It was impossible for the Arabs to think that one day Damascus would be the core of Arab civilizations. The Umayyads' capital was Damascus. So by showing the light going to the borders of Syria, there's an indication that Islam is going to conquer this land. It will take over. And that's exactly what happened. That the very first land that was conquered was the land of Syria. And we also believe as Muslims that Isa ibn Maryam will come down in Sham. He's not going to come down in Mecca and Medina. He will descend in Sham, because it was Sham that was made holy by his ancestors, the children of Ishaq. It was Sham that was made holy. And he will come down in Damascus, and that is where he will meet the Mahdi, and that is of course towards the end of time. So Sham has a symbolism, and of course at this point then I have to make dua that Allah Azza wa Jal frees Sham from the tyranny that it is currently undergoing, and that Allah helps the people who are trying to oppose this tyranny and gives them sabr and patience. And may Allah Azza wa Jal bring the glory of Sham that used to be, bring it back to Sham. We finish up here, there's only a few minutes left. We finish up here by mentioning a few more things that are alleged to have occurred that are not found in the authentic books, but Allahu A'lam, but it says that the temples of the pagans fell down in other lands. I mean, these are things that there's no recorded history of it, and I don't believe this to be true myself. Now, one thing, a lot of scholars say that when the Prophet ﷺ was born, this was when the jinn were stopped entry from the heavens. You guys are familiar with this concept? That's the jinn were allowed entry into the heavens to listen to the angels. And Allah references in the Quran, Surah Al-Jinn, that وَأَنَّا كُنَّا نَقْعُدُ مِنْهَا مَقَاعِدَ لِلسَّمْعِ. We used to listen, we had our resting places, and we would listen to the angelic discussions. فَمَنْ يَسْتَمِعِ الْآنَ يَجِدْ لَهُ شِهَابًا رَصَدًا. Whoever listens now will find shihaban rasada, or basically comments or whatnot kicking him out. So one group of scholars said when the Prophet was born, this was when the heavens were closed to these shayateen. But the correct opinion is that this occurred not at the birth, but when he became a prophet, i.e. at the age of 40. And this is clearly referenced in other hadith as well. That when Iqra came down, when Jibreel came down, the revelation, that was when the skies were closed. And that was when the jinns began wondering what is happening. And then Allah says in the Quran that a group of jinn heard the Quran being recited, and they came back believing in the Quran. So this did not occur at the birth. I just wanted to point that out. And the final thing that we'll say, time is already up. SubhanAllah, was wanting to go a few more pages, but time is already up. Ibn Ishaq mentions that the Prophet ﷺ was circumcised on the 7th day. Ponder for a while. Later books, 7 centuries later, mention he was born uncircumcised. The first book mentions, actually, matter of fact, that his grandfather circumcised him on the 7th day. This is, there's nothing wrong with this. He's a normal child, a normal marriage, a normal birth, and so his grandfather circumcised him on the 7th day, and his grandfather Abdul Muttalib held a feast for him, and his grandfather chose the name Muhammad, which was a unique and unusual name. Some scholars say that this was an unknown name to the Arabs, and one group of scholars says, well, it was known, but it was not common. And this seems to be the stronger opinion, because there are people whose references we have whose name was Muhammad, but it was a very uncommon name, and there was nobody in Mecca by that name. Nobody in Mecca. So when people ask Abdul Muttalib, why are you calling him by a name that nobody knows? Nobody's heard of. Why don't you call him one of your standard names of your fathers and forefathers? He said, I want him to be praised by the people of the earth as I want him to be praised by the people of the heavens. Muhammad means the one who is praised. I want him to be praised by the people of the earth as I want him to be praised by the people in the heavens. And when the Prophet ﷺ was born, the news spread amongst the Quraysh, and Abu Lahab, who was later to become an enemy, at this time of course he is an uncle, and of course he's always going to remain an uncle, but at this time he is not an enemy. Abu Lahab, who was one of the older uncles, by the way, because remember, there were 10 brothers. And Abu Lahab was born with another mother, no other full brother. Abu Lahab did not have any full brothers. Abu Talib and Abdullah were full brothers, and others were full brothers. Hamza and others were full brothers. Hamza and Safiya were full brother and sister. Abu Lahab was his own. He didn't have any full. He was much older. So perhaps he felt a type of, I have to care for this offspring, this orphan. My younger brother died and whatnot. Perhaps he felt some sympathy. And so the girl that came running, the slave girl that came running to tell him that your son's brother has been born, your son's offspring has been born, this girl, as soon as Abu Lahab heard the news, he told her, I set you free. I'm so happy you're free. He was a slave girl. So he became so happy that just because she came with this good news, he set her free. It shows he was so happy. And her name was Shuwayba. Shuwayba. And in our Indian Pakistani culture, it was transformed to Subia. But it is in fact Shuwayba. And those of you who are named Subia, this goes back to this misreading Shuwayba. Nothing wrong with it, by the way, it's just the name. And so there's a hadith in Muslim al-Ahmad, and with this hadith we conclude and then pray inshallah. That's Hamza saw, not Hamza, Abbas. Abbas saw Abu Lahab in a dream. After he died, after Abu Lahab died, he saw him in a dream. And he saw him being punished with the utmost severe punishment. Because this is Abu Lahab, that's the Abi Lahab and Watab. So Abbas said to him, would not your relationship with the Prophet, your uncle, basically, benefit you? He said, no, except for one thing that I did. That when the good news came that he was born, I freed Shuwayba, and because of this, I am allowed 2 drops of water. 2 drops of water. Because I did this good thing when the Prophet was born, because of this, I'm allowed just a little bit of water. That's my concession that's given to me. That's all that is given to me. But the funny thing is, he released Shuwayba and made her free, so she was happy at the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We will continue inshallah next week and the week after that, and then for the month of July, a different series will start. Dr. Bashar will take over completely in a different series. 2 weeks we'll be doing the series inshallah ta'ala. And with this, we don't have time for questions, so we will call somebody to do the adhan, and I will see you inshallah next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Next Wednesday, Dr. Bashar is continuing this year. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And in our last halaqah, we had mentioned the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the details that we know regarding that period of his life. We now move on to the period of his life that is his early childhood, that is him growing up as a young child. And the fact of the matter is that we have very, very little information with regards to these first 20, 30, even 40 years. And as I said in the last halaqah, that if we were to gather together the entire 53 years of Makkah, of the Prophet ﷺ, it would be less than half of the next 10 years that we have information of in Medina, right? And of these 53 years, of course, most of the information begins after the age of 40. So the first 40 years, the fact of the matter is we have limited number of incidents, very few. And I explained the reasons for this, and that is because who is going to record it? And who is going to pass that down? And who lived long enough? And how numerous were the Sahaba? And how much persecution occurred, right? So a lot of these factors combined. But one thing we believe as Muslims, and this is what we take consolation in, is that anything that we need to know, Allah must have preserved. This is of course a theological point, right? We cannot prove it scientifically. Anything that we needed to know about our Prophet ﷺ, we would believe that Allah Azza wa Jal had recorded that. So the first thing that we know of his life after his birth is the fact that his mother gave him to be raised in the desert. Now, this is something that is strange for many of us. Why would a mother give her newborn to be raised away from the house? In fact, this was a custom of the elite of the Quraysh. It was a custom of the nobility of the Quraysh. And they did this for a number of reasons. So this was a status symbol, if you like. It was something that they did as being a part of this tribe. But why did they do it? A number of reasons. First and foremost, they wanted the child to be raised in a pure and healthy environment. They wanted the child to be raised in a pure and healthy environment. And as you know, the infant mortality during this phase of humanity, in fact, even up until 100 years ago, the infant mortality was extremely high. And so one of the ways they would protect the child is to actually take it away from congregations, from what we call civilization, such that there's only 2 or 3 people interacting with the child, i.e. one family, right? And as you know, disease is carried by people, by people congregating together. So when you remove the child from this environment, you in fact increase the chances of its survival. So for the mercy of the child, and to increase the chance of the child living, then they would send him away from the city. Also, of course, they wanted to remove the plagues and the disease of the desert, of the city. Also, they wanted to build stamina in the child. Stamina in the child and make them adjusted to a rough life. Now, even though from our standards, life in Mecca was unbelievably tough, right? But for the people of Mecca, they're used to it. And so they want to raise their child in an even more austere environment so that they then become accustomed to the hardships of Mecca. Because children adapt to their circumstances much easier than adults. And that is why a child who is born in a very impoverished scenario and situation, or in a very congregated or congested area, the child is content and happy, right? Just as happy as the child born in a rich and luxurious family. Allah has made us in a beautiful way. The child knows how to have fun regardless of the circumstance, right? Unlike an adult, now we're used to a standard, and if we were to be diminished in that standard, life would become almost impossible to bear. Even though many other people in the world would love the standard that we have been diminished to, let's say, right? So it is human nature that children adapt to their circumstance. And this shows us that the Quraysh had long-term planning, they had vision, that the child is raised in a difficult environment such that the hardships of Makkah appear like luxury. The hardships of Makkah then appear like luxury. Another reason that some of the people have mentioned is that growing up in the desert away from the family will avoid the pampering that other relatives do. We all know that grandparents spoil the child, let's say, right? It's a rule of thumb. Grandparents spoil the child. In fact, some people say that's why Allah created grandparents. Parents are strict, grandparents are lenient. That's supposed to be the case. So, not just grandparents, uncles, aunts, extended family, they all rule. And of course, every parent knows that no matter how strict of the laws that you have for the children, when they go to their uncle, aunt, when they go to their grandparents, what happens? All those laws go out the window. So once again, to raise the child in a disciplined environment, right? They would be handed over to a particular family. And the final reason that the scholars of history mentioned for this rather strange custom from our perspective, but for them they were accustomed to it. The final reason that they mentioned is that the child being raised in the desert amongst certain tribes. I realize not every tribe is born to Mecca and ask for children. These are certain tribes that are known for this fact. These tribes were known for their fluency in Arabic. Now the Arabs viewed the language of the cities as being corrupted. The Arabs viewed the city language as being changed. Why? Because what happens to any language, it gets influenced by other cultures. Any language gets word loans from other cultures, right? So for example, if you read a modern Arabic newspaper in our times, 30 to 40% of the words are English. Just Arabicized. And as for Pakistan, I would say 70% is English in the modern newspapers, right? That's my problem. I can't understand because I don't know. I think the Urdu word is actually an English word. Like limited company edition, the whole thing is English. I'm trying to read, what is this? You know, in Urdu, I don't understand. It's not, coming in my head. The point being, where does this occur? Not in the desert, not amongst the villages, amongst the city, right? So the Arabs of the Prophet, when they're thinking long term, they don't want the traders from Yemen, from all over the country to come and corrupt their Qurashi dialect. So what do? They send them to the pure areas, the tribes that were known for their fluency of the Arabic, to be uncorrupted, to be speaking the original ancient Arabic. And the most famous tribe that was known for this, the saving of, let's say, the pure Arabic, is the Banu Bakr ibn Sa'd, the Banu Sa'd ibn Bakr. the Banu Sa'd ibn Bakr. And of course, it was this tribe that adopted or that took care of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In one authentic hadith, the Prophet was asked, tell us about yourself. Tell us something about your childhood, about yourself. So the Prophet said, أنا دعوة أبي إبراهيم وبشرى أخي عيسى واسترضعت في بني سعد ibn Bakr. I am the da'wah of my father Ibrahim. Ibrahim made a dua, I am that dua manifested. You all know the dua. ربنا وبعث فيهم رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياتك ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة ويزكيهم. So Ibrahim made a dua when he's building the first house of worship. And as he's putting the stones in place, and he's praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he did say, oh Allah, send a mighty prophet from amongst my progeny, who will recite to them your verse, purify them, and teach them the book and wisdom. So he said, أَنَا دَعْوَةُ أَبِي إِبْرَاهِيم. I am that da'wah. I am that dua response. وَأَنَا بُشْرَى. And I am the glad news. Now, some people have interpreted this to mean the gospel, because what does gospel mean? Is good news. And the Christians, they misunderstood the whole point, according to one theory of Islam, that when Jesus is saying that, I'm coming to preach the gospel or the good news, well, the good news here is in fact, Bushra Akhi Isa, right? Because good news and gospel is the same in Greek, that's what it means. That the gospel is the good news. That's how they translated it. So some Muslim theologians, and seems to be a plausible theory, some Muslim theologians say that there are references in the New Testament that I have to send the good news and I've come with the good news. This good news is not the gospel as they understood it. The good news is as Allah says in the Quran, and as the Prophet ﷺ says, that Rasul min ba'di ismuhu Ahmed. There's going to be a prophet after me. His name is Ahmed. So he's saying, Ana Bushra Isa, Akhi Isa. I am the good news that my brother Isa predicted. And then he said, وَاسْتَرْضَعْتُ. And I was foster cared. Rada'a means to be foster cared. Foster care means to be suckled by another woman than your mother. So I was foster cared by the Bani Sa'd ibn Bakr. And the Bani Sa'd ibn Bakr was the most famous tribe known for taking care of the children of the Quraysh, known for speaking the proper Arabic. Now you all know the story of Halima. We're just going to summarize it briefly. Halima bint Sa'diyya, the famous foster mother of the Prophet ﷺ, she narrates the story in the first person. And it is recorded in a number of books of hadith and of seerah. And so inshallah it is an authentic hadith, no doubt about that, that she said that she and her husband were suffering greatly from poverty. And this was, of course, now why would they take care of a child? They wanted money, obviously. They are villagers, not even villagers, they are people living in the Bedouins. They are desert dwellers, right? And of course, as you know, desert dwellers, they don't get much income. Life is very tough. So one of the reasons why they would walk into Mecca and adopt children from the rich people of the Quraysh, this was a custom only for the rich and elite. It was not a custom for all of the people of Mecca. Only the noblemen, and as we know, Abdul Muttalib is the chieftain, so his children and grandchildren, they must have this custom. This is a custom for the noblemen and the elite. Of course, by the way, in our time, the rich, they have nannies. The rich, they have governesses, right? This is the custom of our time. In those days, this was the rich, they would send their children to the desert. So Halima narrates that we were suffering greatly from poverty. So he's explaining why would she want to take another baby? Because that baby gets money. The parents give money. And so I convinced my husband to go with the yearly time that the women of Banu Sa'd ibn Bakr would go to Mecca and would obtain any newly born child who would be willing to be adopted, or not adopted, but foster fed for 2-3 years. So there was an annual event. Everybody knew this was the period. For 1 week, they're going to come and they're going to find out who has given birth, and they're going to go knocking on their door, and the mother of the child will choose which of them seems to be the one that I like the most. Just like we do in our times, you choose the nanny, the governess, so the mothers would choose the best one. So Halima says that she had just had a newborn. Now, of course, you have to have a newborn to take care of another if you're going to breastfeed. So she just had a child, and they're suffering from poverty. And by the way, she had an older daughter as well. So when the Prophet was taken in, there were 2 children of Halima. There was an older daughter, probably around 7-8 years old, we can estimate. Her name was Shayma. Her name was Shayna. And so she is the foster sister of the Prophet ﷺ. And she had a newborn son. I could not find the name of this son in the 5 or 6 books that I looked up of the early period of Islam. Allah knows, maybe we'll find him in other books, but I could not find him in those. Yes. No. What's it called? A couple hours. I was about to cook some fish, actually. You heard? Order some Uber. So what you's gonna order some Uber Eats, you said? Yeah, come on. I got a couple of hours if you want me to order you something.
This is it. This is it. M. Bison wins.
Sorry if I'm coming off with like I have an attitude or just upset, but I'm really not. Taking it one day at a time. I don't know if I'll be having mood swings or what. Yeah, you're right. Life gets difficult though, like so.
Do you see now the difference in our round two? Fight.
sorry.
Terry wins.
That's what I do. I kind of be just going in the shell and just being by myself. Even though I don't, it ain't the best thing. So for me, so I can't wait to get this psychiatrist so I could just be able to just, talk to someone. Yes. Say that again. No. You really don't.
Bison wins.
But you show it in certain ways. Really.
Thank you.
This is nice. Really nice. Why you think I asked you for that hug? They nice. They really like. I really like it. Really, especially like when you exhale. Like you know, I don't know. It's hugs is different. Hugs is really different.
Right now, I could, like, I don't even want sex. I just want to be laid up. Yeah, I gotta get my shit together. I mean, that was good. I need a good fucking 90 days to myself. I'm gonna move for some Kool-Aid.
I got lemonade.
I wanted to, tropical punch.
That's my first one. Yeah, that blue raspberry lemonade. That thing had me on the beach, man.
Nah, well, I know you don't drink, but I could make a mean ass nutcracker with those two.
I think it was like, I remember it was 24 hours. No,
Yeah, yeah, well, I understand.
I had one. Well, my father, well, my family, they was vending, so I was there helping or whatever. And I don't know how one of them joints got left right across the car. I'm thinking it was regular gas. That
Is
joint
your
was
business
serious.
clean?
Huh?
Is your business clean?
I got, I got some clean ones in the bag right here that I have washed. That's what you gonna eat though. So I got some noodles.
You want me to fry the fish?
I don't know if I trust your fish.
Get the fuck out of here. I'm not even a big fish eater. Matter of fact, I got crab legs for myself here.
It's some bad. I used to be allergic to shrimp.
I said crab. You told my shrimp. See, you always told my something else.
My bad. Dang, can I? It's what?
You got ADHD. You just don't know it.
ADHD.
Yeah, your attention span is fucking phenomenal. That's what we mean.
You think that's why I play the game a lot?
I think that's why you can't multitask.
I'm multitasking there. Talking to you and I'm getting this dang cat here on this bed. That I just so happen to see.
Today's a boring ass Saturday. It seems like everybody that I'm cool with, they either drunk as hell from last night.
Those used to be those are the days.
I mean, I was drinking last night, but shit, I wasn't drinking like the way everybody else was fucking drinking. Like, my best friend, she bought me a bottle. I had my own bottle, but she bought me a bottle for my birthday. I put shit in the house. My mom touched my shit. Yeah, my shit halfway gone. But it's cool, whatever. But it's like, stop touching shit that don't belong to you, because if I touch your shit, you be mad. Alright, cool, whatever. But it's just kind of everybody's fucked up right now. It's like, yo, like, I'm not even like that. Like, I'm fine as hell. Like, I don't know. I guess since I did that little mini detox for like a week, I'm noticing that I'm not interested in drinking like I used to.
You should stop doing certain things. But that's what I'm trying to keep myself from trying to feel like I'm better. I know
You
it's
put
real.
like views on people sometimes.
You said my views.
That's how life should be on people sometimes.
It's. I think. Well, you talking about like with Islam?
No, I'm just talking about anything.
Yeah, I got flaws out there I might not recognize.
You sound mad far from your phone.
My bad. Yeah, I'm throwing. You might be right about multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
But
You get easily distracted. The only reason why I say you probably got I know for a fact I got that MPTSD. Usually I'm mad. Because usually I keep a bag of shrimp in the fucking freezer. I forgot that. That's surprising, right?
no, inshallah, this dude's supposed to be calling me Tuesday. Hopefully, I get these licenses together.
I hope you get something.
Right?
I'm saying empty asshole, but
Dang.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, in a good way too, but like, you need something like to make you feel productive because your energy lately just seems like you're stressed out because you're stressed out, which is rightfully right, but you stress everybody else out because you're stressed out.
Job, wow.
I don't want a fucking dry bag. Nobody's my apple pie. Man, I was supposed to get out my fucking money yesterday. Any fucking way.
How's it work?
I had that amount in the apple pie, then I had that amount of apple pie. Instead of ordering me some wings from my favorite spot, these motherfuckers take my little money because I canceled it because I wanted to change it for my job address. But yeah, I'm mad as hell. I'm mad as hell.
Mm, I should have ordered that thing for the bathroom. That's because I'll be. Nah, let me stop saying like that. I don't think I'm dirty like that. But cleaner days. Oh, sure, I think I'm still streaming. Wow.